Hello, 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 hello. It's that time again. It is time for PMO HotHouse. It's the monthly PMO show. I hope you're all well. We've got people joining us here live in the audience, as it were. We're also live streaming right now across LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. So let's get going. So it's that time again. Hopefully you're all well. It doesn't feel like it's been a month, and that's because it hasn't been. There's been a lot of stuff going on, and we've been trying to avoid bank holidays and holidays, and it just seems like everybody is on holiday. At the moment as well. I think people are getting a cheeky little breakaway before the schools break up and stuff here in the UK. If you've not joined us before in the audience today, this is a what we call a Fast and Furious show, and lots of different PMO bits and pieces. So if there's anything that you find a bit boring, don't worry, there's something else coming around the corner. Co-hosts are John. How are you? You okay?
Hey, how you doing, Lindsay? Good to see you. I am wonderful. I'm in Basingstoke today, mixing it up a bit. I've been brave, and I've got myself outside the M25 for once. It's a lovely sunny day, and there's trees and greenery and all those kind of things that we don't get around my way. It's quite novel.
Yeah, so you're normally in London, aren't you? How about you, Eileen? Where are you today? You're out and about as well, aren't you?
I am. I'm in the northeast now. What I've got on my background there is a very beautiful picture of the northeast. It was looking a lot less colourful and a lot more grey this morning when I was out first thing, but still a great place over to get some kind of sea air first thing in the morning.
Yeah, well, you can probably tell from Eileen's accent that she's gone back home.
I've gone yem.
Oh well,
my mother.
Whatever. Let's crack on. So today we've got hot soft skills. So let's crack on, shall we? Eileen, it's over to you on this segment today. Do you want to kick off?
It is, yes. I'm trusting you to press the buttons at the right places. So, for those of you who've been kind of keeping an eye on what we've been doing, this week we've been finishing off the PMO as a business function report. And two of the key behaviours that seem to be repeated time and time again during the report were pragmatism and resilience. So I thought I would just spend a couple of minutes just kind of reinforcing some of the behaviours that, regardless of what role we play in the PMO, we have to demonstrate on an all too frequent basis. So if we look at pragmatism, first of all, we define pragmatism, if you press the button, pragmatism in the competency framework. We talk about paying attention to detail, and it is really important where that attention to detail, and the details are really important. But we do have to be pragmatic around some of the things that perhaps are not as perfect as we want. And we do need to kind of recognise that in some cases there is a bigger picture which is more important. We often get accused of being the template police and walking around with our truncheons and taking glee when we find somebody who's done something kind of not quite right. And it's really about kind of getting that balance right between paying attention to the right things. So if we go on to the next slide, what I've just got is some examples of perhaps where we might have to think about, is it really important for us to continue to kind of drive through to the detail? So for the PMO administrator, where we've gone to get a project report or a project summary or minutes of a meeting, and we realise that they've actually used the old template, and it can be hugely frustrating. And we just have to think in terms of, if actually it's got all of the information we actually need, then there's perhaps a piece of work we can kind of transfer it over. But we just have to think about, is it worth really, if they've gone to the trouble of actually providing all of the correct information, do we actually need to kind of create a big thing about that? As a PMO analyst, perhaps we're putting together the project plan, and what we find is that there's some kind of various amounts of details, but either because there's been a shortage of time or because of where it is in the planning process, we actually find that actually there's been a number of bucket tasks being put in that plan where it's not absolutely clear in terms of exactly what activities are actually going to be undertaken. And again, we have to look at that bigger picture to say, well, actually, in the grand scheme of things, if that's 6 months further down the line, we've got time over the next couple of months to kind of do that in a little bit more detail. So again, thinking about what's the correct level of detail we need to be working at. By the time it gets to the PMO manager, and we've spent quite a bit of time over the last kind of couple of months talking about this concept of a service catalogue and moving from a support-based PMO to a service-based PMO. And depending on our customer set, it can be quite frustrating where actually they still just want generic support, and we end up having to put that in as a service, which is basically anything else you want us to do. And I think it can be kind of quite frustrating in terms of looking at how much time that perhaps takes. So really start thinking about, well, we do still want to be customer focused. We still want to demonstrate we add value where needed, but actually start thinking about perhaps kind of how much time we need to kind of do to that particular service. And then I think the final element is as a PMO director, where we're kind of going through the prioritization process and putting things in the portfolio, we're still going to get those GFDI projects where, regardless of the business case, if there isn't a business case at all, the PMO director is going to be instructed to just do it. Now, add your own F. Yeah, so I think there are times when, and there are sometimes, if that project is something that's really important, that's urgent, that needs to be done, you can understand why that might be required, and we have to think about how we're going to balance that off. But there are times when actually we just need that to be undertaken and get on and do with it. So that's pragmatism. I'm happy to share all of your other examples in chat where you've had to do with them. If we go on and have a look at resilience, and so we've taken the definition there from the competence framework as ever, to be resilient and maintain a positive attitude. And sometimes it can be really difficult to maintain that positive attitude, particularly if we flip on, particularly in those situations where, as we've just mentioned, we've tried to instill a level of kind of discipline and the right level of governance, and we're still finding that the team is not necessarily fully bought in. So if you go forward one, Lindsay, just a couple of things for us to kind of think about. You can just tap them all at once if you want, Lindsay. Just that kind of first one there, I don't know whether people know the Greek way about don't let them ground us down, is the old kind of saying. And really is this ability to kind of bounce back and keep coming and recognising what we're there to do, recognising it's going to be important. And sometimes that breathe is really important, and sometimes it takes a number of breaths before you can kind of really kind of think that, I've told them 100 times about where the new template is. I've been through the planning process 100 times and they're still not listening. And really, it's really useful then to actually use your PMO team or your PMO network. And this is, kind of one of the reasons why we do things like this. It's to give you the opportunity to say, look, I've been in this situation, I'm getting really frustrated. How do I go back with a positive attitude to still focus on moving them forward? And I think that's my last point, really, in terms of, when we're really struggling, think, well, actually, where were we last month? Where were we kind of 6 months ago? And actually kind of focus on the kind of the bigger picture of moving people forward rather than just kind of focus on the individual tiny steps, because I think they'll find everybody's on here has been in a situation where it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And some days it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back before we have to take the next 2 steps forward. So just a couple of the kind of the key behaviours that are identified in the competency framework.
Yeah, super duper. Thank you very much. And these two, of course, are also figured in the latest Inside PMO report, which gets launched at the PMO conference on the 15th of June, which is this time is called the PMO as a business function. So you can all look forward to that. But before you can rest, Eileen. I love this bit. You're obviously both out and about at the moment, but you've been out and about this week, haven't you, as well, Eileen, that you want to tell us about?
I have, and I think, you know, it was interesting. I saw somebody else had done something on LinkedIn this morning as well, that, you know, it's really important that when we're really busy, to actually kind of take some time just to feed ourselves. So I've not been to an event for a long time, and I've kind of had a bit of a plethora. I had two this week. Both happened to be APM events. So the first one I went to was at Said Business School in Oxford. I'm a fellow of the APM, and every now and again they have fellows forum. We had two subjects this week. We had looking at the business case and whether project success and the dire percentage success rates that we have across the globe, does it really mean actually we're doing it wrong? Is the business case completely wrong, and should we be looking at other elements to really kind of look at whether and where we're adding value as projects? So there's just, I think at the forum we really just got to the position where actually it's probably worth a conversation without any real answers. The second discussion was, I did have a light bulb moment. As you know, we've been talking about, everybody's talking about, even Radio 4 are talking about artificial intelligence and AI and how it's going to change our job. And what clicked with me at the conversation on Monday was that we talk about AI in relation to project data, but actually, that's just that's a too big a bucket. Because actually in project data, we've got at least three different elements. We've got the solution data, you know, the kind of the technical, if we're building a bridge or we're kind of putting in a new process. We've got information about the actual kind of project solution. We've got project management information, so the things that we kind of often work about in terms of the plan information, the resource information. But then the third dimension is also the people information. And actually looking at those three different elements potentially might be three different approaches in how we use artificial intelligence in our projects going forward. And I think the other thing as well is that while we're doing that, we have to recognise that it's not just a project thing, that our organisations behind that, the environment, is going to be changing in terms of how we're going to be using AI in HR, operations, finance, and all of those other good things as well. So again, no kind of real answers, but a real kind of, oh crumbs, you know, I thought AI was going to be difficult, and actually it's far more difficult than I'd even anticipated. So back to that good old kind of adage that says the more you know, the more you realise you don't know. That was definitely Monday. Tuesday, I then popped off into London, which was the APM Portfolio SIG conference. I met with Joe Stanford there. And just a couple of things that kind of I'm going to pick out of that whole day. Firstly is this whole kind of concept of moving from project to product. And there was a couple of examples where organisations had implemented value streams, interestingly being driven by PMOs, in terms of kind of rolling that out. And again, very much kind of focused in IT elements of the organisation, and recognising that the IT and the business functions needed to be much more aligned when it came to bringing in technical AI and kind of the technical solutions. So I think that was an interesting one. And through a kind of couple of the talks that we had during the day, what became apparent, and again I reflected back in some of my roles when I was a PMO manager, is that our jobs are not necessarily just about looking at the kind of the projects and helping people support projects. It's actually at an organisation level providing a workflow process So how do we do work in the organisation? What goes off to business as usual? You know, what's kind of continuous improvement? So it's that kind of much broader piece. And it was really interesting. There was a guy there from, I think he was from Nationwide, whose job title, and I went to look at it, and his job title is Operating Model and Ways of Working, which I thought was kind of fascinating. And I know we had lots of conversations about kind of working with Agile and Safe and whether the PMO has a role. And it's just interesting how that's morphed into a much bigger role in the organisation in terms of how do we get work done. So that was my takeaway this week. So really, really good to get out there. And now desperately trying to catch up with the work that we didn't do on the Monday and Tuesday while we were ranked.
Yeah, you're also Shane was there as well, so I hope you enjoyed it too. Okay.
Oh yes, he was.
Yeah, thank you very much, Eileen. That's great. Let's get on to the next. So it's a regular feature on what's hot right now. Let's have a look at what we've got today. John, you're first up. You have got formula by example. This sounds
yeah. I've gone a bit geeky this week, and I've gone into Excel because I've not talked about Excel for a while. This is a nice new feature that is coming out at the moment on it's only on Excel Online, and to get to it you need to make sure all your settings are set to the US region and US language. So it's a bit cumbersome to actually get this feature, but it is rolling out slowly, so you should see this coming soon. And what it is, if you use Excel, you've probably seen this flash fill thing where if you've got some data in a couple of columns, you create a new column off the back of it and it flash fills the data down for you. It recognizes the pattern you're trying to do, first name, last name, creating an email address, and it populates the information down for you. And it's been a really nice handy feature. The only problem with it is it just drops the data in, which means it's kind of static. What they're doing right now is this idea of formula by example, and you can see it running on the screen there, where in this example, it's taking a full name of somebody and splitting out the first, middle, and last names. We're typing the names into the first couple of columns, and its machine learning algorithm is recognizing the pattern of what we're trying to do, but rather than flash filling, it's suggesting a formula for us. So I've looked at it. I think this is the formula that you want to use here. Does this look right? And it's actually creating that formula for us on the fly within our tables, allowing us to fill that down. So much better than flash fill, because obviously it's dynamic. You change your name and everything works through. It works for this. It works for sort of creating email addresses from things, taking numbers out of a text field and bits like that. It's a great one to play around with. So you might not see it in your version of Excel Online yet, but it is coming. So do watch out for us, because when it hits, it's absolutely amazing.
Ooh, so Excel with some extra bells on there. Thank you, John. So Eileen, you're up.
There we see mine is the complete opposite end of the scale to John's. I'm just liking bank holidays in May, and we've actually seemed to be getting some weather, so we can actually enjoy the bank holidays in May. So I think bank holidays are hot in May.
Absolutely. And mine is really something that we hopefully that you took part in. It was the first International PMO Day, and a lot of activity was going on the 9th of May this year. It actually takes part on the second Tuesday of every year, and loads of people taking part, sharing what they were doing. But I think some of the really nice impactful ones where organizations and also the PMO managers were thanking their teams, really. So they were doing things, really simple things like getting together and having drinks, having lunch together. But it was just really nice to have, actually giving shout outs for people, or certainly around social media and things. So the whole team, were being highlighted, and the kind of things that they've been working on and what they've been doing and that kind of stuff. So I think sometimes we forget, sometimes it's just a simple thanks. We don't have to go out and do lots of things together as a team, but sometimes, it is just a simple thank you makes all the difference. And hopefully you saw that fantastic effort, though, from the guys over in Montserrat. If you remember that they won PMO of the Year award about 2 years ago now, and they really went to town with an amazing cake. Cake seemed to feature quite heavily throughout the day. No complaints here, though, for that. But one of the things that we did on a live broadcast, and hopefully you managed to catch it. If not, go and check it out on the website. We did an hour broadcast of a celebration of PMO. And we introduced this wonderful PMO wheel of joy, because it's all about, it's a day to celebrate. It's a day to highlight some of the, the more, celebratory type of things around PMO. So we brought out the PMO wheel of joy, and we just thought, in terms of this session, does anybody want to have a go at our PMO wheel of joy? Anybody feeling, that they could potentially
oh, look at that, it spins and everything.
Oh, it's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anybody want to put their hand up and have a go? Anybody feeling not shy? Oh, Jonathan's gonna have a go. Excellent. Right, Jonathan, I'm gonna do it for you, okay?
Okay, what do I have to do?
You don't have to. Well, you'll find out. You're gonna
Nothing.
Oh yeah, you're gonna talk. Right.
Okay.
Here we go. Smile. Right, smile. Okay.
I can do that.
Right, there you go. So you can pick a question. So what makes you smile about PMO, or in your case, we'll find out very soon. What makes you smile when you think about the future, and what makes you smile when you think about your career so far? Which one do you want to go for?
I'll go for the first one.
Okay.
And what makes me smile about PMO is, what does it actually stand for? Is it Project Management Office? Is it Program Management Office? Lindsay, I don't know if you were there at the early days of, choosing the acronym, but you did a really poor job. I think whoever was naming the PMO should have thought about, actually, we're going to need to distinguish between a project management office and a program management office. But so that always amuses me.
Yeah. Nothing to do with us. Eileen, who did come up with it? Do you know who came up with that term?
Well, I think it just goes back to, we had lots of fun trying to do the acronym of project management, and then PPM when it became project and program management, and then project program portfolio management, then risk management. And we did get to the point where we got to P3M. And I was in the room when value management came out, and they said P3 or VM was just getting silly. And so people either talk about P3M or PPM as a preference. And I know in the House PMO, we've decided that PMO is actually a collective noun rather than an acronym, and represents any individual department or division that supports P3M delivery in an organisation.
Yeah, brilliant. You'll like that answer, won't you, Jonathan, about it being a collective noun? And
I do. Yeah.
We'll find out why that might tickle your fancy there in a little while, because you're going to be in our hot seat. But before we get to that point, we've now got not right now. So let's have a look at what's on the not so hot right now. John, it's you.
Yeah, so Microsoft giveth, Microsoft taketh away. And whilst Excel is going great guns on their lovely online version, I've less positive things to say about their journey to new unified Outlook. So this is what I saw the other day, this opportunity to try the new Outlook. I love clicking yes on such things and trying it out. And it was painful and horrific. And if you have this appear in your version of Outlook, I strongly urge you not to click it. I don't know, maybe I'm old-fashioned, but what they've done, basically they're taking the online version of Outlook and using that as the base to be unified across all of their platforms. So it's the web version on phones and tablets, but also online as well. So also on a desktop as well. So less of your data is local and everything's going to remain in the cloud, which makes it harder for online working. It's also quite limited feature set. So if you have a PMO where you have a sort of shared mailbox, so you've got 2 or 3 mailboxes down the side, well, that's not easy to make work in the new unified version. There's no option for downloading PST files or taking offline backups of things and all those kind of things. So it feels like a real step backwards. So yeah, I'm not impressed with that one for Outlook. This does seem to be the journey of moving everything towards cloud working rather than local working on a machine. But if you're used to working locally, if you like that functionality, then it's a real step backwards for you. Just a bit of a warning there to anyone who's thinking about clicking that button, because it is painful. And I'm glad I've only done that on the machine that I don't use that often, rather than one that I use all the time.
Right.
No backward step, then you can't change your mind then, John.
No, it kind of goes and then doesn't come back.
Oh dear.
Right, well, on that cloudy note, let's have a look at what Eileen's also got.
Well, and bank holidays again, you see, so again, another double-edged sword. We love having all of that time off. But isn't it unfortunate they're all on a Monday, and how many of us have got jobs that are scheduled for every Monday? I really struggle if I don't have a Monday in a week. So I just think remember when I was a PMO manager, I had things that I needed to do every Monday. So trying to kind of cram your Monday into an already busy Tuesday makes sometimes a week a little bit difficult. But still not prepared to give the bank holidays up, just recognising it's a bit difficult on a Tuesday morning to catch up on all those Monday jobs. Yeah, super. Okay, and finally for me, PMO folklore. Now I am sick to death of this one. This is the quote. This is a number that you hear popping up all the time, which is that PMOs get disbanded after 3 to 5 years. Sick to death of hearing it. It is not true. But this is what happens when you put out a research paper and people don't read it properly, and people just pick up numbers and don't actually put it into context. Actually, when you go back and have a look at that, which comes from Monique Aubrey, and it comes in it's about 2008, that paper. Actually what she is referring to is that every 3 to 5 years that PMOs are changing, they're transforming, they move into, whatever the organization is doing, the PMO is changing and transforming to be able to carry on doing the job that it does. It also doesn't take into account, and I know this is a bugbear of yours, Eileen, that it doesn't take into account PMOs that need to close down, because actually the project and the program has finished. And it's a legitimate reason why it would be closed down. It's just that I know you were to a session not long at the last week, I think it was, and it came out again, and it absolutely it drives us mad. And it has become folklore. And what you're seeing there is AI's interpretation of PMO folklore. So there you go. Nice, pretty picture. But yeah, that's my it's not right now, and not just for now, but forevermore. Amen. Right. And but yeah, you're quite right, John. It has generated some good conversations around things as well. So yeah. Anyway, let's move on. We've got somebody in our hot seat. It's the regular feature that we have where we bring in another voice, and you've already heard from Jonathan. Jonathan Norman is with us to have a chat, and I've known Jonathan for a number of years now. I originally knew him through Gower Publishing, which we'll talk about shortly, but you do lots of other things. But when I was thinking about Jonathan and putting in the image, to what image will come back if I put into AI about Jonathan, there you go, bottom left. Jonathan, a connector, a knowledge person, somebody that instigates discussion, sharing, the big project brain, and there it is. So how are you? Are you okay?
Oh, I'm a bit overwhelmed by that image, Lindsay.
Yeah, fantastic picture. I love messing about with it, I must admit.
Yes, yeah. No, I'm extremely well, thank you. Yeah. Because I'm stepping back from MPA after 6.5 years at the end of this month,
right?
And going freelance, do some volunteering. It's going to be a brave new world. It's going to be, yeah.
Right. Okay. Wow. Well, before we get into that, then, so we've known each other for well over a decade, and the reason why I first knew you is because of this. Look.
Yeah, indeed.
The huge book. That's how we first met, because you were working at Gower, and you've been working in publishing for a number of years. Tell us a little bit more about at Gower, and just generally just working in project management from a publishing point of view.
Yeah, well, I worked at Gower for 26 years, and when I moved across from the training side to the book side, to the book publishing side, I would honestly, which is around about 2003, I never anticipated that project management was going to be the biggest part of my publishing. I kind of thought, we've been doing project management with the wonderful Dennis Locke and others since the early 1970s. what is there left to be said about project management? How little did I know? And it was fantastic. I always used to approach publishing, I guess, in the way I approached my career, full stop, which was it's a very privileged position when you're a publisher, because you get to find authors and commission authors and editors. And I always used to do it on the basis of, what do I think is really interesting, and what do I want somebody to write a book for me about? And I don't know whether other commissioning editors do the same, but it's a good strategy. And I can remember particular books. That handbook is one example. I remember commissioning Gerald Bradley's book on benefits management, which was really fantastic book. When I first kind of came across benefits management, I thought, gosh, this is a big subject. It's really not covered. I'd love to see more. So that's been kind of how I've approached things, is allowed my curiosity to kind of decide what I want to do.
That's lovely, because we love the word curiosity. We're using it a lot at the moment in terms of where the PMO is going to find its space around AI and all that kind of stuff. It is to be curious. I mean, but you mentioned there Dennis Locke. He sadly passed away last week. He was somebody that you graciously put me in touch with, because we both edited this book. So it's been wonderful to have somebody like that in your life. That book's now 10 years old.
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
But,
yes.
Yeah, you approached me and did I want to be a co-editor of a book? I'm like, what, me? But absolutely amazing experience. It took a long time to do that as well, but obviously got to know Dennis really well, and it's just such a really fun guy who just happened to write a lot of books about project management, and actually quite playful and fun and stuff like that as well. But what's your memories of him? What do you think?
I mean, a couple of things. One, Dennis was such a brilliant editor. I mean, working with you and others, I mean, it gave me a capability that was amazing, because he always would say yes to projects, and it meant that I could say, look, let's do a handbook on people in project management. Let's do a handbook on another handbook on program management, or one on portfolio management, and get Reinhard Wagner involved. And Dennis would be the kind of editing stalwart who would bring the whole thing together. So that was amazing. But I also remember the first time I went to see him near St Albans, and I went to his house, and he's the only person I've ever met here. He had a railway that started in his house and then ran outside the house and came back into the house again. And that was just amazing.
He was a brilliant chap. I need to. I'm gonna write up some of my insights from being with him and stuff. It was great fun. Just while we're listening to this, I'd love to know if anybody thinks they've got a book inside them as well. If you've ever thought about it in terms of whether it's more project PMO related or otherwise, drop it into chat. Let us know. I'll be really interested. But Jonathan, from publishing though, now you're suddenly, I see you as knowledge man. How has that happened? What's happened?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was clearly my experience when Gow was acquired by Routledge, and I went to what was part of FTSE 100, and I realised that they were sucking the life out of publishing, and I really didn't want to work there. So there was a kind of desire to do something different, and the opportunity came to launch the Knowledge Hub at the Major Projects Association, to work with the guys at the Major Projects Association. And we'd already developed this thing, GPM First in Gower, which was our sort of our attempt at a community of practice. So there was a sort of natural push, but actually, when I think about knowledge management and I think about publishing and I think about AI and everything, to me, knowledge management is a kind of everything that I do now, using all the kind of media that you guys use so often, is a sort of 21st century post-digital expression of what was previously limited to the book. And so it just feels like a very natural move from publishing. I still do loads of editing, development editing, because I can and because I still love it. So I was very involved with Antonio Nito Rodriguez's Handbook of Project Management, and I've been doing a load of editing for books on product management. So Eileen, what you were saying about product management struck a chord, and I was thinking, I've been thinking, yeah, gosh, we should be talking about the North Star metric. I mean, that's such a useful way of seeing things, and thinking about the ideas bank as a kind of analogy for the agile backlog. You know, I just think there's a lot to be done there.
So
you're not finished work yet.
So you mentioned MPA there, which seems to me is like a big community of practice, and of course PMOs set up their own community of practices and do it for their organisations as well. I'm going to totally put you on the spot. What's your advice? What's a really good piece of advice for people that are working in that kind of role where they're trying to pull together a community? What have you learned over the years that's been could be really useful?
If you're trying to build a community, then the best place to start, without question, is start with a community. It's kind of, I mean, I say that glibly, but actually find out who's already doing stuff, who's already naturally connecting with other people in the organization, who are the go-to people. So who are the people that you go to for information? There was I always cite this, but back in about 2013, there was a company called Carter, which was a sort of online trading company. And they had 250 employees, and they did this exercise of asking their employees, who do you go to when you need information? Who do you go to when you need a decision? And who do you go to when you need support? And employees were allowed to nominate up to 3 people. And they did a kind of network map to see what that looked like, and they found first of all, they found none of their senior team were in that network featured at all, and then they found that if they went to kind of one connection below, so the second degree of connection, they found that 90% of the organization were connected to these people, and it's just such an obvious place to start, and I'm sure anybody working in any organization, particularly in PMOs, you know who those people are, and you can see them, and they are generally, it's a bit like commissioning books. Actually, you go and you find the busiest people and the most connected people, and they're the people most willing to help and get involved. I mean, they just can't help themselves. So that's
what I do. Actually, if you think about those network diagrams, I can just see it now. There'll be one big point where it's got a lot of lines going into it because it's this person. That person should be highlighted and saying, you know what, give that person a massive rise, because just think about all that extra stuff they're doing, you know, over and above their job. And these are the kind of people that you absolutely do not want to lose at your organisation. I really like it. They make it visual as well.
I think so. And in the 6 years I've been at MPA, you know, we started with the kind of knowledge repository, which is great. You know, I love the knowledge repository. It was all explicit knowledge and the learning legacies and all that kind of good stuff. These days, I'm right at the other end of the spectrum and focusing almost entirely on tacit knowledge and you know, for understanding tacit knowledge, how things really happen and how people deal with kind of uncertainty and complexity and everything that you've been talking about in terms of what's hot and what's happening and AI. That's where it's happening. And so I think this kind of community activity and building your own community as well as an organizational community is kind of pretty fundamental, really.
So Jonathan's actually somebody that if you're not already connected to Jonathan in some way, you know, I'm just going to put on screen right now how you can do that, because, you know, this is the kind of person that you should be having in your...
Oh, definitely. And particularly if you want to write a book, then I'm always happy to kind of give advice, you know,
yes,
without fear or favor, and I'll do that for free. You know, I'll happily have a chat with people about benefits of publishing and different ways of publishing.
Right, well, people, you know, please do have a think. But what's next for you then, Jonathan? You said you're going to be going freelance. Are you still going to be part of doing work around major projects, or is it a completely new?
Well, I hope so. I've also got lots of connections in the major projects world, and I've made it clear to my colleagues, to Manon and Andy and others, that I'm very happy to do work on a freelance basis for them. So yeah, I hope so. I'd love to do more in the kind of complex project space, communities of practice. I'm in conversation with a kind of little nascent network that we've got together with Donnie McNichol and Martin Paver and the guys at Co-Create. So that's Joe Lucas and Karen Nelson, and we're looking to see, can we do something creative together? And then alongside that, I'm anticipating doing more kind of volunteering and being more visible in the kind of APM PMI space. I would have loved to have been at that fellows event, Eileen, but we had an MPA team event on the same day. I was making a macrame pot holder, which was a great experience.
Another story.
Well, thank you very much, Jonathan. It's lovely to catch up with you. Thanks for joining us today. And like you said, if you're interested in knowing what's going on in project management, perhaps more ahead of the curve, and the whole knowledge piece. If you don't know Jonathan, please do connect to him. Keep an eye on what he's getting involved in, and if you want any kind of knowledge, book stuff, any of that kind of thing, you know where he is. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you ever so much.
So we're coming to the end of the session, where we always have this singers. We like to go out on a blaze of glory, which just normally means we're just about to go. But let's just do a quick wrap up. John, you're in the seat today.
Absolutely. Another amazing session, loads of ideas, and so much there to sort of think about. I love sort of Jonathan's thing there, talking about what else is there to say about project management. Back in the 1970s, thinking that, and you look at how far we've come with technology, with agile and all these things. Imagine what the next 50 years are going to be like. Absolutely incredible. So there's so much that we're still exploring, still learning. We talked a lot about knowledge today, this idea of how we're separating out project data for AI, but also then we're thinking about tacit knowledge that Jonathan was talking about. How much is AI going to play a part in surfacing some of this tacit knowledge and mapping it together? And in terms of mapping things together, there was that great idea that I think everyone should take away and play around with in their organizations, asking those really simple questions. Who do you go to for information? Who are your go-to people? And starting to draw those maps in your organization, looking for those important people, and that kind of shadow organization chart for your organization that probably isn't the hierarchical one that we traditionally see. Loads of other things. We talked about how Excel's not good, got new bells. We talked about whether I'm a Luddite for not liking the new version of Outlook. And crucially, we talked about the importance of cake. And I guess that's the key takeaway for today. So no matter how much AI comes along and changes our world, at the end of the day, there'll always be a slice of PMO cake driving us forwards and motivating us to think about what else there'll be to say about project management in the next 50 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Just remember, the robots can't eat cake, so that's even more for us. So we're coming to the end of it, and we've got another session coming up next week, and we're going to be doing a lot more through the summer, switching stuff to do more things during the day, freeing up people in the evenings so they can go and enjoy the British summertime, fingers crossed. And of course, what's big on the horizon is the PMO conference in London on the 15th of June. Still some tickets available there, selling like hotcakes, brilliant to see. So we're really looking forward to that day, obviously. But until we see you next time, to the next HotHouse will be a bit more of a focus on that conference, because we'll be coming back to you after that date. Okay, so that's it for now.
Well, Lindsay, so really quickly, for anyone listening on streaming on LinkedIn, on YouTube, or watching the videos, for next time, do come along to the House of PMO website, sign up there. You'll get into our inner circle on Zoom, where you'll be interacting with us live on chat. You'll be able to put your hand up and we can see you and maybe even draw you into the conversation as well.
Super duper. Thank you very much. Have a lovely rest of your day. It's the weekend. See you later.
Bye. Bye. Bye.